Mothers Against Drunk Driving, better known as MADD, continues its mission to end drunk driving and drug driving across the country, including here in South Carolina. Today, I talk one-on-one with the South Carolina director for MADD, Steven Burritt, for this edition of Quintin's Close-Ups. And if you haven't already, subscribe to my YouTube channel and like Quintin's Close-Ups on Facebook. Steven Burritt, welcome to Quintin's Close-Ups.
Glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Oh, I appreciate it greatly. Needless to say, you are the Regional Executive Director for Mothers Against Drunk Driving, better known as MADD. And of course, MADD's mission is to end drunk and drug driving, support the victims of those violence and crimes, and prevent underage drinking and other drug use. So tell me, what's new? What's now with MADD?
Yeah, we're at a very busy time. I think we're at a really important point in the history of drunk driving. For decades, we saw the numbers come down since MADD was founded, and that was encouraging. At one point, we had cut national drunk driving fatalities in half. And then during the pandemic, all across the country, but especially in South Carolina, we saw the numbers spike in an incredibly negative direction. In fact, from 2019 to 2023, South Carolina drunk driving fatalities went up 50% in just that 4-year period. That was something that we never thought we would see. And now we're at a point where both on the national level, we're on the cusp of some real changes to literally changing how cars are being made in this country that are going to make cars too smart to let a drunk driver operate them. And the opportunities here in South Carolina to really change our DUI laws, which are in drastic need of help. I do believe they are the worst in the country and probably contribute to the fact that, unfortunately, South Carolina is the nation's worst the worst state in the nation for drunk driving deaths. And we can do better. And we're, I think, poised to try to make those kind of changes that are really going to save lives.
What ideal changes can save lives right now?
Yeah, well, let me start with what I sort of teased with on the national level. So we are fortunate that in 2021, Congress passed a law that says that regulations need to be issued so that cars have what we call passive anti-drunk driving technology, meaning that without doing anything like blowing into a tube or putting your finger on a sensor, basically you have a normal driving experience. The car would know whether you're impaired, and that technology exists. There are lots and lots of cars in Europe that have this. It's expanding exponentially there. Soon, millions of cars will have this. So we think it's an incredible opportunity. And those who have researched it have said when all cars in the United States have this technology, we'll see 10,000 lives a year saved. That is something, virtually the end of drunk driving as we know it. Unfortunately, we were by now already supposed to have those guidelines issued to automakers. The government's, now over a year behind in that process. And so one thing that we are very active with at MADD is making sure we keep the pressure up to let our government know that we need to put these regulations out as soon as possible, because every day wasted is a day when we're not saving lives that we could. And then on the state level, again, we have a lot of flaws in our drunk driving laws. Unfortunately, really low percentages of people in this state who get arrested for DUI get convicted. And maybe not every single person arrested should be convicted, but like we have one county where we monitor and 18% of those arrested are getting convicted. Like, that's ridiculous. That just means we clearly have a law that is too complicated and not enough prosecution support. And we're really going to try to change that in 2026. And I think we can do that. I think there's the momentum to get that changed. But South Carolina doesn't have to be worse than the nation for drunk driving deaths. There are things we can definitely do to make a difference.
And without naming any counties, Stephen, what particular county has the most, arrests without convictions?
So right now, the last report that we put out with our court monitoring, we were tracking 7 of the larger counties across the state. The best county for convictions was Spartanburg County at 65%. And frankly, compared to other states, that would be an atrocious conviction rate. But in South Carolina, that's about the best that we see. Richland County was about 19%. And then in the low country, we see like Charleston and Berkeley counties as 2 of them. They're sort of in the low 40s kind of area. So sort of in the middle of the pack for the counties that we monitor. But again, all counties are dealing with sort of the same flawed DUI law that it just sort of twists itself in pretzels to help people get out of their DUI charges. And that doesn't keep any of us safe. I think there's a direct connection to our low conviction rates and our high fatality rates. If we don't hold people accountable when they commit this crime, doesn't mean we ruin their lives forever, but they need to get the kind of penalties that will keep them from doing it again, which include things like ignition interlock devices, which is where you have to blow into a tube for your car to start.
Right.
Those are incredibly effective. We now have a law in South Carolina that says that everyone convicted of DUI has to have one of those devices for 6 months on a first offense. But if we don't convict people, then they don't get those devices. So we've got the right solutions, but if we don't hold people accountable, then we don't get the benefit to the public of keeping our roads safe. So those are the sort of things I think we can change in 26. And everyone has the opportunity to join their voices with MADD, to let their legislators know that 2026 needs to be a year where we truly change the laws in a way that can save lives.
And I know the number's probably low, Stephen, but how many of these cars actually have those devices right now?
So right now in America, none, because we haven't issued those sort of regulations. Now we are hoping that some automakers, even before the regulations come out, that they'll do it voluntarily. And there's a lot of work going on to make that happen. And maybe we're seeing some signs of progress. In fact, the Insurance Institute for Highway Safety, which is one of the nation's most preeminent organizations that rates the safeties of cars, and a lot of people when they go to buy a car will look up like, who does the Insurance Institute for Highway Safety say are the safest models out there. They've actually announced that within the next few years they won't give their top safety pick rating to any car that does not have this technology. So even separate from the government ordering it, which is still what needs to happen to save the most lives, I'm hoping we will see this is a sign that the industry realizes they need to do this anyway. So none right now, but that could change within the next few years. We could start to see these rolling off the lines. And again, we can't miss a day getting there, because again, at MADD, one thing we know is we work with victims and survivors. We meet the people in the immediate aftermath of these terrible crashes. And to know that there could have been technology on somebody's car that could have kept this from happening, that their loved one would be home for the holidays if not for somebody's terrible decisions. I don't know how we pass on those opportunities to avoid these sort of tragedies that tear people's lives apart.
When it comes to those guidelines that you all are suggesting that the government really expedite, why the red tape for this?
Yeah, unfortunately, it's sort of a difficult pattern with traffic safety. I mean, every few years, the Congress does issue new regulations on what needs to be changed about cars, and they always take longer than they're supposed to. We just have to get there faster. I mean, the same process happened for seatbelts and for backup cameras and for airbags. Unfortunately, the industry doesn't run towards making these changes as fast as we think they would, knowing how much safer our cars could be and how many lives could be saved. So we have to have that pressure, and it doesn't just have to come from victims and survivors who have been personally impacted. I mean, anyone who just wants to know that roads can be safer and they can be protected from a drunk driver can lend their voices and let the government know that we need to move on this, because no one thinks they're going to be a victim of a drunk driving crash until that terrible day happens. And so really, even those of us who have not had personal stories in our family need to be just as concerned as those who do, because tomorrow, unfortunately, could be the day when something terrible happens. And as we're going into the holiday season, we know that is a time when the risk of drunk driving crashes increase. So it's a good time to be thinking about how we can make ourselves safer. And this is the most significant thing we could do, is to most speedily as possible get that sort of technology on US cars.
A couple of questions for you. What other technology would be ideal to eliminate drunk driving?
Yeah. So right now, what the government should be doing, and we hope they're making some progress, is studying all those options. So there have been identified as many as almost 150 different sort of promising technologies,
Wow.
and some combination of them we think are going to work. Again, in Europe, they already have this on cars, so we have the model of what can work. So I think with a combination of ignition interlock devices for people convicted, because we're not advocating that every car should have ignition interlock devices. That's just for those who have been convicted of DUI. And then one day, waiting till these new cars come out that have really good technology. And it's probably going to be a combination of watching people's pupils. So a lot of people have cars already that will tell them like, hey, you're drowsy, or hey, your eyes aren't on the road. That same sort of technology can be programmed to look for the same signs of impairment that law enforcement officers are doing when they do, what's called the HGN test.
Sure.
You can program cars to look for those same things, basically. So in almost no time at all, it is completely realistic, and again, it already exists, that the car can detect with 99.9 percent precision that this person perhaps is impaired and should not be able to start this car. So once we know we can do it, we just have to get it done, because it doesn't help us to know we can do it. It only helps us when this is actually on cars. And so we're making progress, and we're starting to see some shift in the attitude of the automaker industry, but not fast enough. It's never fast enough when every day we're losing innocent lives.
What automakers are actually on your all side right now?
So nobody specifically has started the process. I think it's more we're looking for signs and sort of quiet conversations about who wants to be that first automaker to be the one to say that we're going to do this. And to be honest, if eventually this is going to happen in some way, shape, or form. What typically happens with traffic safety innovations like this is, it comes out as a optional safety package on the highest trim level of one of the most expensive vehicles. And that's great because you get a few more cars on the road that have this sort of thing. But that's not what saves 10,000 lives a year. That only comes when the government says everyone has to do this. And so we don't want to see this as something where it just rolls out slowly for a price tag. This needs to be part of every vehicle that's sold. And like I said, we're starting to see signs that the industry is realizing this is coming, and they might as well hopefully go with it as opposed to fight it. That's different than just a few years ago. So that's the sort of culture shift that MADD's playing a role in trying to have, is making the public aware that this is something that these companies could be doing, and how do we accept not doing it once we know this is a possibility.
What are those other culture shifts that you see when it comes to drunk driving?
Yeah, well, I think we've done a really big one. I think back, and people of different ages can probably think back to what you know how drunk driving used to be more of a joke when I was a kid. I don't know, for whatever reason, for me it was the show Hee Haw, which some people are not old enough to remember that show. But when the town drunk would roll up in his pickup truck with a jug and tell a few jokes, and everybody would laugh. I think we've come a long way in making the point that drunk driving is no joke, that it is incredibly serious. I hope we're to the point where most people, if they found out somebody they loved or a friend of theirs, had driven drunk the night before, that they would say, "What the heck were you thinking? Never do that again." Yet at the same time, on the average day in this country, there are 350,000 drunk driving trips. So over the course of a year, as many people drive drunk in this country as they are that live in the state of Texas. So somehow we've gotten the culture right, yet on an everyday basis, people are still just not making the right decisions all the time. So it's something we have to keep working on through culture shift. So one thing that MADD South Carolina will do is the second week of December, we celebrate as Designated Driver Appreciation Week. And we just want people to think about what an incredible gift it is to be a designated driver, and to be one, or to make sure you use one. So we're hoping that restaurants will do something nice for the designated drivers that come in, and we're asking people on their social media to put a picture of them making a sign of a heart with a hashtag I heart designated drivers. But particularly going into the holiday season, where there's more people having office parties and celebrating. Some people who maybe don't even drink that much are going to drink more than they're used to. If people just plan ahead and make the right decisions, this could be a really safe holiday season. In fact, the best advice I will give is take a ride share to where you're going. So your car's not even there, because if you don't have your car with you, you can't drive it home drunk.
Right.
So just make plans in advance and say, we're just going to make this a safe night, either by having a totally sober designated driver or using rideshare. And we can prevent all these tragedies, because if we don't, we're going to get that phone call, and we're going to meet another family who is destroyed by the fact that one of their loved ones was just out living their life and then doesn't get to come home. And we get too many of those phone calls, and frankly, we're tired of them. And it's our honor to serve every family that calls us, but it's heartbreaking every time to know that it does not need to happen.
Absolutely. I don't drive. I don't know how to drive either. But when it comes to ride share and sharing, have you seen an uptick with that?
Oh, absolutely. And it's really, one of the major factors, I think, that we were starting to see drunk driving deaths decline, and use is still going up, despite the fact some of those numbers. But it's not because that sober driving doesn't work. And really, the great thing is too, when you look at the demographics of who really does use rideshare a lot, it's people sort of like in their 20s, and that is the age range that is the most common to cause drunk driving crashes. So I shudder to think what the numbers would look like if we didn't have rideshare. And we're really grateful for those who use rideshare. And then also, again, with Designated Driver Appreciation Week coming up, let me also thank all those who do drive for rideshare companies, because they're getting a lot of people home safely who otherwise might be taking the chance, thinking maybe they're okay to drive when really they're not. And so, there's lots of ways people can be safe, and being a rideshare driver and using one are two great ways to do that.
Absolutely. Speaking of demographics, Stephen, when it comes to drunk driving, as far as these, you know, suspects and whatnot, what are the demographics there?
So we do see obviously drunk driving and drugged driving occurring by all range of people. It's never just one type of person.
Right.
But when you do dig deeper into the numbers, we do see that like 21 to 35, typically males, are sort of the group most likely. But we, of course, we all see all sorts. And of course, anyone can be a victim of an impaired driving crash. That does not discriminate
Right.
at all. And so it's why we all need to be so concerned and sort of get behind the mission of MADD, because it could be any of us. But yeah, that sort of 20s, young 30s, that's sort of a risk-taking time of life for people when they think things don't happen to them. Maybe they're not thinking through all their decisions. So thank goodness there is rideshare, but again, too many people are still making those wrong decisions. So everyone needs to be aware of what gets everyone home safely. And another group of people that can really make a difference this holiday season are the people who are hosting holiday parties.
Right.
So if you bring people together and you're serving alcohol in your home, you've got a responsibility. You've got to be looking out for the people walking out of your door. Not only could you get sued, but obviously you have the opportunity to make sure your friends get home safely, or that they don't affect another innocent person on their way home. So keeping an eye on your guests, making sure you're serving non-alcoholic beverages to people so that they have choices. Maybe putting it away before the end of the party, so people aren't drinking right up to the last minute when they leave, making sure you've got food. And then ultimately, if you've got to take the keys or call someone an Uber, do that, because the other possibility is you send someone out of your house impaired and they destroy somebody's life, and you don't want that on your conscience either.
No, not at all. Absolutely. I hate to ask this question, but we're coming up obviously on 2026 here in the next couple of weeks. But here in South Carolina, how many victims and survivors do we have because of, obviously drunk driving and drug driving?
Okay. So really the only good numbers we have are for drunk driving. We really don't even know necessarily how many people are impacted by drug driving. But for the last year that we have sort of the best numbers for all states is 2023. And we had sadly 413 people lives were lost because of drunk driving in South Carolina. That's the 8th highest total in the nation, but we're 23rd in population. So there are states with literally millions more people than we do that have less drunk driving deaths than we do. In fact, the most stark contrast is North Carolina, our neighbor to the north, same population, same culture. They have literally double our population, and they had 2 more drunk driving deaths than we did. Those numbers simply don't add up. So on a per population basis, South Carolina is worst in the nation. On a per mile driven basis, South Carolina is worst in the nation for drunk driving fatality. So we really have to get serious about this and finally decide we no longer want this sort of distinction, because it's not something new. South Carolina has been among the nation's worst states for drunk driving for decades.
Obviously, as you know, South Carolina is growing tremendously by the day. People moving here by the day in droves.
Yes.
How does this particular organization keep up with that growth?
It's hard to do. We're a relatively small crew. We have a big name. We like to think we've been around a long time and have made a big impact. But when it really comes to actual number of staff people, MADD South Carolina is pretty small, as is the whole MADD organization. So yeah, we try to be as visible as we can. We try to get out there and hold events, keep people thinking about this. We have obviously incredible volunteers, many of whom are victims and survivors, not all of them, who help us, bring the message all across the state, because there's only so many of us.
Right.
But when they really bring their powerful stories, whether it's speaking to a group of people who have been arrested for DUI, or speaking in a school, or doing interviews with the media, when they tell their powerful, moving stories, that's what truly changes hearts and minds. So, I do my best to sort of give the statistics and tell people about what MADD does, but obviously it hits different when you hear from someone who firsthand has lost a loved one or has suffered injuries where they, sort of barely survived and are still recovering today. It's our victims and survivors who, who got the national BAC changed to .08, who got the national drinking age changed to 21, who got Emma's Law passed in South Carolina to where we now do require ignition interlock laws for everyone convicted of DUI. And one day when we have this new technology on cars, this passive anti-drunk driving technology, it will be because victims and survivors opened their hearts and shared their pain with lawmakers and really made them realize that there was no other choice other than to pass this.
And speaking of opening your hearts, today is Giving Tuesday. So how does that affect MADD?
Yeah, we are absolutely a charitable organization, and obviously it's a tough time for lots of nonprofits. We are incredibly grateful for those who support us. We have some great corporate supporters and individuals, but yes, we absolutely need new friends. We need people to get behind this mission. We never want to have to take a step back in what we're doing, and there are some grants that we have and things like that help us fund some of our services that we provide to victims, but those are also getting cut back. And so we never want the day to come when somebody calls and we don't have somebody ready to serve them. Thus far, we've been able to do that, but it gets a little harder every year. So yeah, on Giving Tuesday, we'd be incredibly grateful if people considered putting us on their Christmas list because we have the opportunity, as we've talked about, to truly change drunk driving for good in ways that we never thought possible. But it's going to take a strong MADD to help push that across the finish line. So people can help us serve survivors, push for these kind of laws that's going to keep everyone safe. And we're grateful for all those who already do support us, both businesses and individuals.
And for more information on MADD or drunk driving and drug driving as far as education, how do they go about that?
Sure. So our website is madd.org. Our Facebook page, MADD South Carolina, is really where we keep most active in terms of telling people what we're doing within this state. So those are probably the best two ways to keep up with what we're doing. And people can certainly, put their email in at the website and get action alerts or updates when it's time to contact your lawmakers. We really encourage people to join what we call nationally the MADD Advocacy Network. So when there are opportunities to put pressure on lawmakers or the government to move some of this technology forward, that's one way that people can sort of know that this is the time to make those calls and to tell their stories. Again, even if it's just that they're sick and tired of knowing that innocent people are dying because of this. So lots of ways to get involved. We are a volunteer-driven organization. So if anyone's interested, our volunteer coordinator would love to have a conversation with you.
Oh, great to hear. Well, Steven Burritt with the MADD, thank you so much for your time. And again, welcome to Quintin's Close-Ups.
Thank you so much. Enjoyed talking with you. Have a great day.
Likewise.